You're muted.
And hello, movie lovers, and welcome to the show. For tonight's podcast episode, I have Soda with me. Say hello to everybody.
Hey, guys, how you doing?
And tonight we are actually doing our Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 Dream Warriors review. This is a movie that I really love, to be honest with you. It holds a precious thing in my heart, to be honest with you, whenever I look at the Nightmare on Elm Street series altogether. Because don't get me wrong, I love the first one, the first introduction into Freddy, the meaning of how that was created. And then also to have part three. To me, part three is the standout for me because it's very relatable with the characters, and also too, you have a character that's into the D&D realm and stuff like that, who's actually a nerd like us. So therefore, I actually relate to that character a lot more than I do any of the other characters. And then also too, we also have a very young Lawrence Fishburne in this movie. To me, this is very entertaining. The special effects still hold up in some way. But what about you? What do you love about it?
Well, I love the rock and roll aspect of it because of the soundtrack. And I also love that this is actually connected to the first installment, which is the last time we get that. Actually, it's the only time we really, truly get that with the character of Nancy and her dad. So I like that as well. And this probably has some of my favorite special effects out of all of them. Like there are great ones in the other ones, but this one as a whole, I think has some of the best amount after the first one. And plus, it's a good story. You can relate to the kids in one way or another. And yeah, it's really cool to see Patricia Arquette and Lawrence Fishburne, or as he's credited as Larry Fishburne in some of their early roles, because it seems like Nightmare on Elm Street had a knack for doing that at the time. Because first movie you had Johnny Depp, and then the third one you have Patricia Arquette and Lawrence Fishburne.
Right. So you can't go wrong with having that kind of casting choice or anything like that, especially when you look at the 1980s and everything too. Because I like how, like you mentioned before, we have Johnny Depp in part one. Then after that, it picks off with part three with Nancy in this film. And then after that, it goes into New Nightmare with Linda Camp being Nancy again, wanting to reboot the franchise pretty much.
New Nightmare.
But still.
So would you consider, like, number two, briefly, would you consider that like a sore thumb in the series in a way?
What, having Nancy in there, or?
No. I'm talking the second one, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. It's just when you look at the whole series, because they're all connected in one way, but then you have this one that's like right there that almost, it seems like it doesn't fit.
It doesn't fit, but at the same time, it kind of does in a sense, because you have Nancy's notebook, you have her diary they're reading. So you have a little bit of a callback, but also keeping the an originality behind everything. So that's something that I really did appreciate with the second film. You still have some cohesive stuff that happened within the first film, and then connecting it over to the second film.
And let's not forget its infamous nickname, Friday the 16th.
Right.
Or no, Friday the 16th, I think is what they called it, because it's just so, it's an overly, I don't know if it's intentional, but an overly sexualized fetish, weird fantasy movie.
Right, exactly. But with this third one though, man, I really enjoyed it. As a matter of fact, I've always liked the opening scene where you actually have hold on, here a little bit of an echo. But no, what I like but the thing that I like the most though about this film was the fact that you have Linda Camp coming back as Nancy, and then of course, everybody's like, well, I don't really want to work with this new person, this new doctor, or anything like that, that's going to tell me what to do or anything like that. And then you finding out, hey, it's Nancy. She actually knows something that's going on that these other people don't know what's going on. Then of course we're also introduced to Kristen Parker, who dreams of being chased by a disfigured man wearing a bladed leather glove, and he attacks her in the bathroom after she thinks she already woke up, making it look like that she was slitting her wrist. So it goes into teen suicide, it goes into other things that teenagers actually go through, and then also too, these characters are survivors of Freddy and everything too, but you don't know how they're connected, you don't know how they're what's going on, but Nancy knows just enough to where she to basically to be able to try and help these teenagers out.
And all she needed to hear was part of that nursery rhyme.
Right. If I remember,
this one has some great special effects. Yep. It has, my favorite has to be the marionette.
Yeah, the marionette one is my favorite.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, my favorite death scene, to be honest. But yeah, you actually have where Nancy calms her down by singing the lullaby of 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. Right. And everybody's like, well, how did you know that? Well, I have experience in
Yeah.
this. And so now it's about getting to the meat and potatoes of dissecting these dreams and trying to help these kids fight this nightmare that's inside of them
Mhm.
that Freddy's trying to get to them, because they're the last remaining kids of the Nightmare on Elm Street kids.
Yeah,
And
which
right,
is a great way to tie it in because like you never would have really thought about that there might have been more parents there trying to protect their children because all you knew was like the core of that group. But yeah, bringing that in as there was more of them, it's a great way to tie them all in.
definitely a great way to tie them in. And then also too, you also have of course you wind up have Kristen's mother, who just doesn't really care about her daughter's well-being that much. If you think about it, yeah, she's put into she's in a mental institution, but at the same time she doesn't understand what's going on with her daughter or anything
Right.
like that, because of the fact that the special effects with the sink where Freddy's
Oh,
gloves
that was
basically,
great. Great.
that was creepy.
Yeah, I love watching movies from this time, the 1980s, especially the slasher films, because of the creativity they put into their moments. Um, and yeah, I love that they did the stop motion thing to do the hand. It's just it's very Freddy, and it's just wow.
Definitely. And also too, another thing that I liked was the paper mache thing of her making the
Yes.
house, the haunted house. That was my favorite thing on there, to be honest with you. I'm a huge fan of haunted houses, and especially grungy, dirty looking houses that are abandoned and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then she's dreaming about this. That's something that I really like though too. Is
Right.
is that
Right.
aspect.
Because they establish her as a very strong, I guess, empath of sorts in this
Right.
universe. Yeah.
Yeah, because basically what she can do is she can call people into her
Yeah.
dream, which we find out later on in the fourth film and
Mhm.
things like that. But in Nancy's dream, she's just strong. She doesn't have that ability just yet of calling other people into her dreams like in the fourth film.
Yeah.
But I definitely like that aspect of, oh, okay, well, if I need help, I'll just call somebody into my dream just to help.
Taco says hi, by the way.
Right.
He says hi, John. He messaged me and I told him I was doing your show. I couldn't
Oh,
talk.
tell him I said hi.
Yeah.
But I love Robert Englund as Freddy. You can't get a better person to play Freddy than
Yes.
Robert Englund,
And
of
you
all
know, I
people.
will say Jackie Earle Haley gave his a very good interpretation of his Freddy Krueger, but yes, there is no one like Robert Englund in this role. He is Freddy.
Exactly. And then also too, there's also another thing that I want to mention too is we have different people, different kids going through different things. You have,
Mhm.
of course, like I said before, we actually have Kristen Parker, who is basically going through suicide attempts. Then you
Yep.
also have, of
Well,
course,
they're all going through suicide attempts is the thing.
right,
That's why
but just
they're
different
all
styles though, too.
correct. Yes, different styles. Yeah.
Because you actually have another character that sleepwalks,
Yep.
that's going through some type of mental thing as
Mhm.
well with his suicide. Then you
Yep.
also have Joey, who's a mute and everything
Yeah.
too.
And then you have Taryn, who's the recovering drug addict.
Right.
And then you have I forget the kid in the wheelchair's name.
Oh
Um
yeah, yeah. You actually have the other guy who is
yeah,
actually,
Will. You have Will
yeah,
who
Will.
tried to jump out a window and paralyze himself.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have Jennifer who wants to be a TV actor, and she has a pretty memorable death in this movie.
She definitely does. She definitely
Yeah.
has a presence in this movie as well,
So fun
especially
little
welcome
trivia
to.
about that scene. So you know how you have the two lines like "Welcome to Hollywood" or "Welcome to Primetime Bitch," and then there's the other line. So those are
Yeah.
two separate takes. Robert Englund did two separate. Decided to improv the "Welcome to Primetime Bitch," but they liked it so much they sandwiched it around the shot.
Oh, I remember hearing about that. And then, of
Yeah.
course, they actually added more sound into his voice
Mhm.
to make it more horrifying,
Yeah.
too. So whenever he says, "Welcome to prime time, bitch," then yeah,
It
I
sounds
remember
more
that.
demonic.
Yeah. And I definitely like that demonic side, not to mention how many times that I actually had nightmares just from that scene alone as a kid, because
Yeah,
I was thinking that Freddy was going to pop out
for
of there.
me, I knew who Freddy Krueger was because you at that time you really couldn't escape Freddy, but I never watched the movies until I was older. So this one I actually saw probably in my early 20s, but it's not how I found out about the movie. I found out about the
So,
movie, if you want to bring this up.
yeah, tell us how you found out about the movie.
Well, so I grew up with an aunt and uncle who liked rock music of the 1980s because that's when they were teenagers and stuff like that. And so I inherited my uncle's collection, and I inherited some of my aunt's tape collection. And in it was the promotional cassette tape for Dream Warriors, the theme song by who, because of this, is one of my favorite bands of all time, Dokken, who song Into the Fire also appears in the movie. And yeah, so this was my first actual introduction to the movie. Years before I'd even seen it, was this cover and this song. And it's always something that stuck out to me until I finally had the chance to watch it, because unfortunately my local VHS stores did not have this installment to rent.
Oh wow! Here's the thing: we actually had this installment, of course, in our movie, our video store and stuff like that. So of course I knew about the Rock Band being in it and stuff like that. And to me, the Rock Band stuff for this particular soundtrack and everything is just awesome to have.
It fits right in.
Definitely, especially fits in with their element on what they're doing and everything else. Especially when you look at the theme of what they're doing for Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and things like that with Dream Warriors. Yeah. And it has that whole entire aspect of a fantasy world that they actually build within the music itself. So I definitely like that aspect to it. And then, you know, another thing that I want to mention is the fact that there's Nancy is actually introduced to Dr. Gordon's patient Philip, who's a habitual sleepwalker. Kincaid, a tough kid from the streets who is prone to violence. Jennifer, like we mentioned before, is a hopeful television actress prone to cigarette burns. Will, who uses a wheelchair because of prior suicide attempts. Like you mentioned,
one of the first people to play D&D on screen.
Yes, and he actually made it look cool to actually play D&D. And I remember having that D&D set. And because it used to come with like a VHS tape, it used to come with other directions and stuff like that. It's not as a well-built thing that we have now. It was just starting to get in being popular in the 1980s.
Yeah, and what a great way to do it! Put it in one of the most popular film franchises of all time.
Exactly, and you know, I liked how the role playing, and then of course, you know, they're asking one of the other characters, "Well, what would you want? What would you do?" Because I'm going to bed. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and what I love is that in our introduction to all these characters, we are essentially given foreshadow to what they take on in the dreamscape. Like example with Will, he likes D&D, so who is he in the dreamscape? He's a wizard. Taryn, she wants to be a badass. She thinks she's a badass. What is she when she's in the dreamscape? She's bad and she's beautiful.
Yes.
Right? And then you have so every one of them has, like, you're introduced to who they are and what they will become early in the script. It's there, but you don't really think about it at first time you see it.
Exactly. Not only do they, here's the thing that I liked about that though. When they're in their dream state and everything, they're tough, they're badasses and things like that. But on the out, and also too, I feel like after they realize who they are in their dream state and everything, it gives them a little bit more of a courage, a little bit more of a will to fight, because now they realize that they can have the outcome of their dreams and help take down Freddy possibly, and also
and not just that. All throughout the, like, this is something that just dawned on me while I was watching. You can blame the drugs, you can blame whatever. What I like is that when they're in the dreamscape, we finally see who these characters are, because when we see them in the real world, they are a shell of themselves because of the sleep deprivation. You know, the Freddy's chasing them and stuff like that. But when they're in the dreams, we see their personalities, we see how strong they are, we see who the characters are, and I really like that.
Same here as well, because on the outside, they're scared. They don't know what to do. And then as soon as they find out later on that they can have control over their dreams and that they are total badasses, that's where the transformation comes in of being able to probably take him down, which is something that I really liked. And then, of course, you know, another thing, too, that I want to mention is this. You were right about the whole entire thing about, as a matter of fact, I looked at my notes about Nancy. About being able to, where basically she winds up taking Nancy and pulling her into her dream, because remember, Nancy falls back into her chair and that brings her into the dream, into her world,
which is a reverse of what we see in the first one, because in the first one we find out that you can actually bring something from the dreamscape, or in case something attached to Freddy, into the real world, and now we're seeing the inverse of that.
Right, now we're getting to see people being transferred without having to fall asleep or anything like that because of Kristen's powers. So I like that aspect. There's a new original take for it, something that we haven't seen before within the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise itself. So to incorporate that, I thought that was actually cool. And then, of course, you know, this is also her inside the old house, and this old house and everything, trying to take down Freddy, and he's also a snake. But
So that is well, you said you see the documentary, but what they were
right.
talking about it in Never Sleep Again, that was actually a real true rotting pig. That was a real pig, and apparently it stunk of the joint. And that snake, they had to repaint it because originally it was pink and it looked way too phallic.
Yeah, it looks.
And it
Yeah,
still
that's
does.
a polite way of actually saying what it actually looks like without
Yeah,
actually
that was
saying
their
it.
quote in the documentary.
But to me, I think that it was actually perfect the way that they have it now versus
Mhm.
what they did before. Because before, like you said, it's very phallic. It's pink. It makes it stand
Yeah.
out in a standoffish kind of way that you don't want to actually have.
Yeah. And if they were to do that stunt nowadays, it would be CGI and it would look cool, but it wouldn't look great. Whereas this, they actually built the worm and they put Rosanna Arquette into it, and it was a mechanical, functional device. And that's the stuff I miss in my horror movies.
Same here. I feel like today in horror movies and stuff like that, I feel like CGI. There's an overuse of CGI without having to use with the overuse of CGI. You don't need to have CGI to tell a good story or anything like that, especially with horror. I like
Yeah.
good practical effects, maybe mixed in with some CGI, but not oversaturated with CGI or anything like that.
Mhm.
And I
Oh,
feel
of
like that's what,
course.
yeah. And you know what? I like the mechanical aspect of it that you mentioned before with the snake, with Freddy's head. I definitely like the fact that they actually had to build this thing on set and
Mhm.
then try to figure out a way to maneuver it and stuff like that while they're trying to film. I thought it was very interesting on how they had that play into it.
Mhm.
And then, of course, this whole entire thing of this movie is very complex, but it's complex because of the fact that the storytelling in itself that I really liked about it.
Yeah.
But then Kristen also reveals that she's had the ability to pull people into her dreams since she was little. Over the next 2 nights, Freddy throws a Philip off the roof and kills Jennifer by smashing her head into a television,
Yep.
which we mentioned. But
And I love it. Like, she committed suicide. How the hell do you commit suicide like that? You'd have to be like Scottie Pippen to jump into that TV.
not only that, but the force alone to even if she could go up to that TV and everything and jump on it, you actually have to put full force into your face to smack to do that.
Yeah.
That's like an impossible thing to do.
You'd have to like get a running start and jump off a mini trampoline to do that. Like that. Yeah.
That was just something that was just disbelievable. But then again, this is Nightmare on Elm Street. It's not supposed
Yeah.
to be believable,
No,
anyways.
of course.
But still, it
Still,
makes
like,
me
come
laugh.
on, that's a logic. That's a definite leap in logic there.
Definitely. And I feel like this. I feel like maybe the doctors or something like that were under Freddy's spell or something like that, to where they were like, oh, it was suicide. We're just going to try and cover this
You'd
thing up.
think so, yeah, but the way that they're ignoring the kids, you'd think that was the case, yeah.
Because don't forget, we've seen that in It a little
Yep.
bit, where basically the It is under the influence of putting the spell on the parents and everything else to make them believe that that they're that what they're seeing is not real.
Mhm.
And then, of course, another thing too is this that I feel like that's very interesting that they did with this is the contortionist thing with the sleepwalking.
Yeah, the way he was doing it was like a Spider-Man like type. It was freaky when you're seeing it without the effects.
Definitely, because at first it's like, okay, you see the veins pop out and everything, making it look like a suicidal gesture with him cutting himself, and then all of a sudden the veins pop out and he's being contorted with Freddy and everything, being the puppeteer.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once you see him on top of the roof, Kincaid, everybody else is just horrified at seeing that Philip is actually up there. And then as soon as he cuts the cord, he winds up dying. And to me, I thought that death scene was pretty cool to see, but also too very sad to see because of the character that dies. But the one thing I can say is each character had a purpose in this film,
Of course.
and they had a story arc to tell. So
Yeah.
they're not very one-dimensional if you think about it, especially coming from the 1980s.
Yeah. And like, for example, for Joey, the guy who couldn't talk, they made his that he's got a crush on a nurse. So it kind of plays well in the ability to talk, because guys at that age don't have the ability to talk to people they deem more attractive than them. So I don't know. I kind of like them, and they tied it into his dream where the girls are coming to him, and it turns out it's Freddy, and which Freddy with boobs, man, Freddy with boobs.
Right. That was a frightening thing to see, because that was Joey's fantasy
in the movie.
The tongue scene. That
Yes.
tongue scene was something to
Where
see.
she shoots the tongue out, and the rest.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, this makes me not want to be with anybody for the rest of my life after being horrified with that.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, okay, this. But, then of course, Joey's actually in a coma. So now they have to try and figure out a way to bring Freddy down, because now it's no longer just about them. Now they have to try and save their friend. And then, of course, they go into the whole entire aspect of the psychology of hypnosis. And I like the psychology of the hypnosis thing, because now they're having to go in there, trying to fight for their friend, trying to help their friend, and being in this thing of psychiatry. And so I like how they play off of that. And then, of course, they're like, well, what was your powers, Kristen? And she just shows that she's strong will and stuff like that. And, of course, she also has something else that the other people don't have, is pulling people into their dreams. So that's another thing. And then Kincaid is also the type of person that can bend a chair. Then you have...
Well, he's an overly, like, I don't want to say aggressive, but he's got a lot of anger but he's got a lot of anger issues, and he doesn't take orders from anybody. So it makes sense that they made him that he is strong and can do anything, and nobody could hurt him in his dreams.
Exactly. And then, another thing too is that I want to mention, and that I forgot all about, was Kristen's mom once again, with the very beginning of it, where she's like,
PITCH is all I can say about that.
Yeah, Kristen's mom is probably the most just a bad parent.
Out of all the Elm Street, out of all the parents in these movies, yeah, I'd say she's the worst.
She's the worst of them all. And then also too, she goes, her boyfriend's like, well, where's the bourbon at? And she goes, I'll be right down. And she's like, look, we'll talk about this later. And, and it's like, and Kristen's like, well, what about me? What am I going to do? And everything. So you feel something for the character. You have some connection with the character. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, she winds up going into the sink. And, of course, Freddy slits her wrist. But, the mother is just a bad parent. And I won't even say that Freddy had anything to do with the fact that with that kind of spell putting on the parent or anything like that. That's just being a crappy parent.
She didn't need it.
Right.
Like it's something like what I love is how relevant when it comes to the way they treat mental health in this movie. It's amazing how accurate it still is almost 30 years, actually almost 40 years later. Because there are still parents who say, oh, they're just doing it to get attention.
Right. And that's all that people say too. Oh, they're just doing it for attention. Yeah. This is just for attention build and everything. Yeah. That's all. There's nothing going on with them, when really you don't know. You haven't been into the roots of who they are.
And the look of relief on their face when they call out Nancy and she says it's a man in a dirty brown hat. He's got knives for his fingers. His name is Fred Krueger. And the look on everybody's face is like, finally someone knows. Finally, I can relate to someone. And that I think that was one of the more well acted scenes, because they all played relief very well.
Right. And then they're like, well, what does he want from us? I don't get it. What did we do to him to make him want to kill us? It's not about what you did. It's about what your parents did.
Sins of the father or mother.
And I also like how they put it into it. He goes, well, my parents never told us that. Oh yeah. Like that's just something that someone's going to do.
Yeah. Here's your breakfast. By the way, I killed a guy.
Right. It's like, by the way, your dad and I, we decided to torch some guy for murdering other kids, and now he wants to kill you. Have fun. Here's your lunch. Have a good day now. Yeah, that's not something that people are gonna go in. You know what I'm saying is they're not gonna go in and talk to their kids about something like that from the past like that.
Yeah.
Then totally. Of course, another thing too. that I really I like I said before, I like the psychiatry scene. I thought that was really
Mhm.
good. The no, then of course, you actually have the pills though to go with it.
Yeah. The
The
hypnosil.
hypnocil. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so basically Nancy wants to try them out on hypnocil, which is an experimental drug at that time, which plays out in Freddy versus Jason later on in the
Oh god, yeah.
in that
I
franchise.
love that movie.
Yeah. And so the hypnocil, and so basically this is what winds up happening. They're actually relieved of their jobs because of the fact that Joey winds up being in a coma because of the fact that Freddy nurse wanted to kill him
Mm.
and things like that. But then also too, I liked how Freddy
Well,
tries.
also because Freddy wouldn't release him.
Right, Freddy's not going to release him because
Mhm.
he needs Joey to try and pull them into that dream
Yeah.
state so that way he can lure them in. But also too, I also liked how you have the Wizard Warrior. I like that aspect where
Mhm.
you have the Wizard Warrior now, which I thought that was hilarious, to be honest with you, because I feel like that character is represents us nerds, to be honest.
Totally, totally. And that's what us nerds were represented as back in the day.
Exactly. And so Will is like, I am the Wizard Master. I will take you down. And then Freddy's like, oh, yeah? Well, when you wake up, it's back in the saddle. And he's
And
kind
then
of trolling him and gives him the wheelchair.
that is a
And
nightmarish wheelchair, man.
yes, it looks like more like a BDSM kind of wheelchair from or
Yeah,
Nine
it
Inch Nails kind of
it,
wheelchair.
it looks like if the Iron Throne was at BPSM. That's kind of what it reminds me of.
Most definitely. And then, I like how Will destroys it because it's
Mhm.
like him saying, yeah, that's who I used to be, but this is who I am now.
Yeah.
And conquering his fear of the wheelchair. Then, of course,
Womp, womp,
Freddy winds
womp.
up, yeah. You're thinking that he's gonna be doing something to Freddy, but Freddy's just pulling him in, suckering him in to kill him. And then, as he's suckering him in to kill him and everything, that's when he grabs Will and then kills him. And
Mhm.
then it goes into the other girl, the other girl where she says that she's a total badass with the mohawk.
Aaron, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll let you talk about that scene.
So yeah, basically, like her whole thing is she's a punk rocker at heart. So she's just badass chick with the knives, and Freddy shows up and he's just like, "Oh, do you miss me?" It's like, "You ready for that high?" And he puts up his fingers, and instead of the knives, they're needles. And then she looks down at her arms, and this is disturbing. On both of her arms are needle
The track.
tracks, but they're suckers. And how does Freddy kill her? He stabs the needles into the suckers and he overdoses her. Her
And then
worst
he gets
nightmare,
right.
falling back into the habit of drugs.
Yes, and it goes to show you that your demons can, if you don't. To me, I think there's a moral to it in a sense with that. If you don't stop what you're doing, your own demons will kill you.
Yeah.
Kind of aspect to it, but Freddy winds up killing her, like you said, overdosing her, and then
Mhm.
of course there's that line, "Oh, what a rush!"
Yeah, but it's the way he says it because it's like after somebody with that eye. Oh, what a rush!
And then we go into the other characters with Tincade and
Mhm.
everything too, and so at that point, after a couple of the other kids are dead and everything, we wind up, of course, you see Nancy, she wakes up and she finds out that Joey is in a coma.
Yeah.
And then the nurse is then I also like how they play into this where it's like the door is burning.
Mhm.
And then of course the nurse opens the door, the head nurse, which is the one who thinks that everybody's just killing themselves with a
Yeah,
TV
like
set.
Nurse Ratchet in the Nightmare on Elm Street series.
Definitely. And so anyway, she opens the door and everything, and she sees Joey on the ground. Next thing you know it, Nancy is relieved of her job. And then you also have, of course, Neil Gordon, who's also relieved of his job duties as well because
Yep.
of what happened. So we have that going on. So, it's like, okay, I'm trying to help these kids, trying to get to the bottom of it, but now
Mhm.
you won't even let me do that. You won't even let me do my job. And you're
Exactly.
thinking that it's me that's doing it when it's not.
Mhm.
But then, of course, I like how Nancy's talking to Freddie. And she goes, "I'm gonna," and basically, she's trying to tell him, "Let him go," and he goes, "Come and get me, bitch."
Yeah,
And
isn't that when he scratches it in Joey's chest?
yeah, that's whenever
Yeah.
he
It's just
scratches
like
it.
I wonder if he still has those scars.
And then, that's something that I was wondering about. Like, even in the dream sequence and everything, I'm like, okay, you see him, but there's no scars or anything like that on his chest in the
Yeah,
dream world. So I'm like,
pretty
okay, that's kind of confusing in a sense, but let's just go with it.
much.
Then Nancy is so basically now Neil's trying to help her. He goes, well, what's one person that that could actually help us? And of course, he's
Yeah,
also seeing visions of the sister
yeah,
of this nun.
yes. You know who plays the sister?
Who plays the sister?
So her name is Nan Martin, but if you're a child of the '90s, you know her as Mrs. Lauder from the Drew Carey Show.
Oh wow, okay,
That's
that's
Mrs.
her.
Lauder.
That's crazy, dude. I didn't even know that all this
Yeah,
time of me watching the Drew Carey show. I had no
that's
idea.
Mrs. Lauder. Yeah.
That's just nuts. But yeah, the nurses over there trying to explain to him how he can kill Freddy, where he came from, the origin of Freddy. And I like the fact that we have now, even though it's leading into the third film, now we have a background of who Freddy is.
Yeah.
And he so happens to be his own mother got beaten and raped by
Mhm.
these psychopaths.
Which spoilers we see in Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Dreamchild.
Yes, and we also see that play out again in Freddy's Nightmare in the sixth film.
Uh, Freddy's Nightmare?
Well, not Freddy's
Oh,
last nightmare.
oh yeah. Final Friday. No. Freddy's Dead, the Final Nightmare.
Yeah,
Yes.
Freddy's
Yeah.
Dead, the final nightmare. But yeah, we actually see that play out. Of course, she winds up getting killed by these. Basically, they wind up hiding her in
Mhm.
this mental institution and just raping her and everything. And then, of course, she winds up giving birth to 7 maniacs. So yeah.
It's just, dear Lord, she must have been walking funny.
God.
I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry. It's just one of those. I had to say it.
okay, but yeah, I mean, then of course you just feel bad for her, and then after that winds up happening. Neil realizes what he has to do now. He has to try and find out where Freddy's body's actually at,
Mhm.
and there's no way of actually knowing. So he asks Nancy, "Where do you think that you can tell me where Freddy's body's at?" You know, and so she goes, "I know a guy that knows," and it
Yep.
happens to be it's her own father that helped kill Freddy in the first place.
And who's had a massive fall from grace, because when we see him in the first movie, he's a detective at the local police department. Now he's a security guard.
Yeah, and also too a drunkard.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's lost his ex-wife. He's lost his daughter's relationship is bad. He can't get a job anymore. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But one plus side, at least Nancy came out on top of everything,
Of course.
despite everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Out of everyone who you think would be the most messed up, yes, she did come out the best out of the family.
right? She came out of the best out of the whole situation, especially within the first film. But you really feel for the guy, and then he's like, "Well, I'm not going to tell you where I buried him at or anything." So Neil's like, "Let's have a conversation." And I like how he puts everything into it. Because he cares about Nancy and cares about
Mhm.
her well-being as a colleague. I don't see him as a love interest in this film. I see him
Me neither.
mostly. I see him as a colleague that cares about another colleague and wants
Yeah,
what's best for
that
her.
scene for me after they attend the funeral where they're having dinner at her place, it just I know what they were trying to set up, but the way they made it looked like it was trying to do a romance, but it doesn't click. You're right. They do
No.
feel more like colleagues more than they do romantic as a romantic interest.
Right. It just feels forced when they try
Yeah.
to do it. It just goes to show you that some things are not meant to be when it comes down to horror films of having certain romantic interests in other characters and stuff like that. For me,
Mm.
it's Nancy and Neil. Neil and her just don't click. And Neil did have a little slight hots for her whenever you first see her come into the entrance of the asylum, and then after that, he kind of just drops everything and starts helping Nancy out as a colleague. So I
Yeah.
didn't even figure that there was even a connection there at all.
Yeah.
But then Neil talks to the father, and then of course that's when they go over to
They go to a
uh
junkyard. Or
yeah
no, they
no
go to
no
church first.
yeah, because remember they have to get the holy water to
Yep.
try and bury Freddy and stuff like that, and give him a proper burial in order
And
for the
breaks a
nightmares to
crucifix
stop.
off the wall in
Right,
front of a priest.
because I'll bring this back to you. But then, of course, then you wind up seeing the therapy section again, and straight talk only in this room. And then I like how they're trying to get to they're actually trying to get over to Kristen because
Mm.
she's actually locked up in a padded room. They can't get to her at all or anything
Yeah,
like
because
that.
they've heavily sedated her.
Right. And even Lawrence Fishburne's characters is not giving her access into
Mhm.
Heather's room at all. Not Heather, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Heather's the one that wants to go in
yeah,
to Kristen's. I always want to say
Kristen.
Kirsten, but Kristen.
Yeah,
Yes.
Kristen's room. And so basically what winds up happening is this. She's like, look, I really want to see my kids one more time before I leave. Can you please let me in? He goes, no, I'm not really supposed to. Come on. I need to see them. Okay. But 5 minutes, that's it. Otherwise, it's going to be my ass. So, she winds up having therapy session again. And then that's when I like how they did this whole entire scene with the feathers, with the pillows and stuff like
Yeah.
that to represent that they're actually transferring themselves into
Transitioning.
another part.
Yeah, which is different from when every other time you see a character goes into a dream because it's done seamlessly. Like you can, if you're paying attention, you can click where it is usually, but for the most part, you're not sure whether it's real or not. Whereas this, yes, they're definitely telling you like they're entering the dreamscape now.
Exactly. And, I liked how everybody's there talking to Kristen, trying to explain to her, look, we're here for you. We want to try and get you out of this situation, out of
Mhm.
this room. Then, of course, you see the walls start turning boiling hot to the point where they can't even touch anything. And
Yeah,
then after that winds up happening, then like I said, then you get the feathers again. And each person is in their own individual theme of where their dreams are. You have Kristen, who's back at home with the crappy mother.
yeah,
And then, of course, you have the very introduction into Kristen's life where her mother's out on a date. And that's, of course, when the father, not the father, but the boyfriend says, where's the bourbon? He goes, oh, we're going to go on ahead. And basically, this is what winds up happening. He winds up asking, where's the bourbon? And she goes, look, give me about 5 minutes and I'll be right down and give me 5 minutes. So she's talking to her daughter. Next thing you know, you see Freddy comes bum rushing her,
yep,
takes her head off. Because I said, "Where's the bourbon?"
yeah. Dear God, that's just disturbing.
It is, and then her head is talking too.
Huh.
Kristen's mom's head is talking. Just damn it, Kristen! Every single time I bring home a nice guy and everything, you always have to spoil it. And then after that winds up happening, there goes into another scene with and everything. And I thought that each scene was actually pretty good, to be honest with you. But
Yeah.
do you want to talk about any of those?
Well, we already did.
Right.
This is where we
Okay.
start to
So
see everybody. We did it. We did it already. Just what I
okay.
think
So
what I find is funny is like, yeah, we're strong. Let's go do it. Let's meet up. They drop. They all die. Yeah,
because they don't realize that Freddy can change things within their dream and
correct.
use their own demons against them to hurt
Which he
them.
did for all of them.
He did. And that's something that I really have to say that was just crazy. Um, then, of course, like I said before, Nancy and the others again engage in a group therapy to reunite with Kristen. That's in my notes. And then the trio tries to rescue Joey, but is unable to defeat Freddy because he has become too powerful due to the souls he's absorbed. And Freddy senses that his remains have been found and takes possession of his own skeleton in the
Yep.
real world.
And what is probably the worst effect in the movie?
Yeah,
Very
that stop
Harryhausen.
animation was bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's very.
yeah, yeah, because at that time, Neil and also two Nancy's fathers they wind up finding where the bones and the remains are and everything, while all this other stuff is going down where Freddy's actually stronger than anything else. And then
Yeah.
of course that's when they're trying to bury Freddy. And then at that time, when they're trying to bury Freddy, that's when he comes to life again.
Yeah.
And yeah, that stop animation just is very cringy. And
Yeah.
I know
It's
that I said
very.
the effects still stand out a little bit. That
Yeah.
does not stand out.
No,
That's
that is the one
still
that has not aged. It probably looked cool at the time, but it's definitely the one that has not aged the best.
definitely. And so after that winds up happening, Neil winds up being knocked out by Freddy with a shovel. Then you also have, of course, Nancy's dad who winds up being shoved into the junkyard into the car, making and of course he winds up dying because he winds up getting stabbed by a sharp object within the car. And
Yeah,
then
unfortunately.
so now it's now up to, of course, Neil to try and put the end to Freddy. But then we see another thing that plays out with the mirrors scene. Remember with
Yeah,
Joey?
where Joey, like, basically Freddy's about to come down on everybody. You think the end is nigh. Joey's panicking because he wants to say something, get someone's attention. Finally, his voice appears and he shatters all the glass, which is noticeable because Freddy is in the glass trying to get at everybody from all the angles. But when he shatters them, they think, oh, that's over. It's not.
It's not. It's far from over, as a matter of fact, because everybody doesn't even know what Joey's powers are up until that glass breaks. Because remember, he's actually quiet the whole entire time.
Yep.
And yeah, Brandy grabbing everyone. Yeah, he definitely grabbing everyone.
Yeah, pretty much.
And Kristen's dad dies. Yeah. And then, not Kristen's dad, but of course, what winds up happening is you see Nancy's dad, he winds up dying, but then of course you see him in the dream state, supposedly. You're like, okay, what's going on over here? Why is he in the dream state? Is it because of the fact he's dead now? Maybe that he's actually transported.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to think, right? But that's
right.
Not necessarily the case.
Kind of like he passed over into the unconsciousness. So then Nancy goes up to hit her father, and then of course that's when Freddy winds up stabbing her and killing Nancy, and then after that winds up happening,
finally gets his revenge on the last of the Elm Street kids.
Yeah. So now we have Neil who wakes up from unconsciousness, and then he winds up burying Freddy, putting his body into the ground, and then trying to give him this proper burial. So first he does the holy water.
Yep.
And then after the holy water, he winds up taking the crucifix and putting it on his head like a vampire.
Yep.
And leaving the cross emblem, and also too with the holy water, seeing the light being reflected off his body.
You see in the dream, you see that in the dream world. It's like the water poked holes through him like Swiss cheese.
Right. And then after that happens, he's pretty much supposedly dead. And then after that, basically you see the paper mache house where Neil is, and the light comes on to indicate that Freddy's still alive.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and then that's when we get the familiar Dream Warriors theme music. I just want to jump briefly into number 4 because it has the because of how Freddy died and where he died. It has the most ridiculous resurrection scene where it's a demonic dog that pisses fire, and that brings Freddy back in the junkyard. You're like, cool.
But I do like, even though it's kind of corny, but I like the special effects of him being brought back.
Yeah,
that part was cool.
Premise of
right. But there is a little bit of trivia that I want to mention, though.
Yes,
too.
I love trivia. I love trivia.
So get this: Wes Craven first came out with the basic idea for the movie from a series of an article in the Los Angeles Times over a 3-year period about a group of Southeast Asian refugees from the Hmong tribe, several of whom died in the throes of horrific nightmares. The group had come to the United States to escape the murderous reign of Pol Pot, and within a year of arriving, 3 men had died, all in similar situations. The young, otherwise healthy men would have a nightmare, then refused to sleep for as long as he could. When he finally fell asleep from exhaustion, he woke up screaming, then died. Autopsy results revealed that they had not died from heart failure, but simply died. It was this inability to find a cause of death that intrigued Craven so much. Medical authorities have since called the phenomenon Asian death syndrome, a variant of sudden unexpected death syndrome. It's called SUDS and Brugada syndrome.
It's you hear that and I'm like, there's no way that happens, but then you read into it, it's like it's a real thing.
Right, and that's something that you don't expect. And then also, too, that's also where Wes also got the creation of having the very first Nightmare on Elm Street movie, where a bunch of people were actually dying in their dreams. So he thought of the idea of making somebody that would actually kill somebody in their dreams.
Yeah,
so
his version of the boogeyman.
Right. there's also another thing too.
Oh,
Uh,
who wrote this movie, by the way?
okay,
No,
so
no. Oh, if you got it, cool. I was gonna actually I just threw it out as you see if you could get it off the top of your head.
Wes Craven co-wrote the movie.
Yes, but who's one of the other credited writers?
Uh, I can't think. Let's see. It was by Wes Craven, Bruce Wagner, and Frank
Frank
Darabont.
Darabont.
Yep.
Frank Darabont. The
Yeah.
guy who directed The Shawshank Redemption. Yes, this was one of his first gigs in Hollywood.
Oh wow, that's actually pretty interesting to know that he. Of course, back in those days, though, too. Like, well, we'll give a couple million to a studio to make a movie and see what happens.
Pretty much.
You know, and of course, it's also on the brink of basically New Line going bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Too, because of the fact that they didn't barely had enough money or anything like that either. So therefore, all the effects had to be done at a certain way.
Yeah, and that's one of the that's the endearing part of those effects. But they've always said that New Line Cinema is the house that Freddy built, because if it wasn't for Freddy Krueger, it wouldn't have lasted.
Exactly. The New Line Cinema was saved from bankruptcy by the success of the film, and was jokingly the house that Freddy built, like you mentioned. Heather Langenkamp beat over 200 actresses for the role of Nancy Thompson, among the Jennifer Grey, Demi Moore, Courtney Cox, Tracy Gold, and Claudia Wells.
Yeah.
The scene where Freddy's arms were achieved by having men with fishing poles on each side of the alley.
For the first one?
No, this is actually it right here. Oh,
no,
well, that was actually.
I was gonna say the kill what you just described is in the first one.
Well, I'm doing a little bit of a callback to the.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I know I was stoned, but I don't remember this.
I'm actually sober, so let's see.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another thing for Freddy for Nightmare on Elm Street 3. The Freddy glove that was stolen from the set of this film was found in another movie. Do you know what movie it was found in?
Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday.
What was it?
I said Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, because I know another glove appears in there. No.
Evil Dead 2.
That's this.
It was hanging on the wall of the work shed in Evil Dead 2.
You're right. Yeah.
Released the same year. It was. Yep. Jennifer Rubin was told by some of her fans that her character Tyron had caused them to quit drugs, and the actress is very proud of that fact.
Yeah, if there's something like, even if you don't have a successful career, if you can take something like that with you, I mean, you've won.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then once after a tiring day on set, Robert Englund fell asleep in his dressing room, still in full Freddy makeup. When he woke up and looked in the mirror, and he scared his own self.
Yeah, that'd be quite a sight staring back at you, huh?
Robert Englund admits that he knew that Patricia Arquette would be on the big star one day. He also explains how all the guys on the set were head over heels in love with her.
Yeah.
Between takes, some of them would even go to England to get his advice on whether to not. He thought they had a chance with her and should ask her out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this was her very, very first movie. If not her very first acting credit, was the lead in this movie.
Dang, that's just crazy to think about that, right?
Yeah, there's a reason she's won Academy Awards.
Definitely. And I want to say this too. I actually got a chance to meet Robert Englund.
Oh, cool.
I actually have an autographed picture that he signed for me. And it says, "To John, sleep kills."
Of course.
So Robert Englund is always going to be my Freddy. Don't get me wrong, Jackie Earle did an okay job. I just didn't like the dialogue, and I didn't like the direction that they were going in at that time.
With that one, I didn't like the stuff they tried to recreate. Like, I think that shot of where Nancy's sleeping and you see Freddy come out, I think it's perfectly done in the original. The CGI way they did it is garbage. But what I really like is the new stuff they add, because it goes on the premise that was originally supposed to be in the original Nightmare of Freddy as the child murderer. Instead, they made him a child. I think they just made him a child molester.
Yeah,
but
they made him a child molester.
You do see what he did and who he did it to and why they're all connected. Instead of, oh,
Exactly.
he was molesting our kids, so we decided to kill him. No, you see it, and that makes it even more disturbing.
Right. And to me, I was actually sold on that aspect of seeing that because I wanted to see that actually get played out in the film. But the
Mhm.
way in the direction of how they did things I didn't really care for that much.
Yeah,
With the dialogue and also to the repetitiveness of trying to give us Easter eggs from the very first film instead of letting it
yeah,
be its own thing. You
and
don't
that
need it.
was a popular unpopular trope from that time when
Right.
they would get remakes is they would try to replicate the stuff. Yeah, it's cool to pay homage to them. If you're gonna do it, don't shit on it. Like, don't make it
Exactly.
terrible. You know, I know they weren't trying to make a bad movie. So unfortunately, it's a movie that you shouldn't. It's not a movie that it needs a reboot. The first one still works fine on its own.
Exactly. Uh, let's see. Tamara from Two Blur Girls podcast. Robert
Yeah.
England ruined my childhood.
So
And then, thank you.
it kind of happened to me as well a little bit. So, like I said, they didn't have this one in my in VHS stores, but they had Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And I don't know if you know the kill I'm talking about. It's about the mom who the one who gets fed to death.
Yeah, I know what.
So they
Yeah, the
had that
daughter.
they had that image on the back of the VHS cover.
Yep.
And as a kid, I would go and I would look because I'm like, you see the cover. I'm like, oh, this is cool. You flip it, you're like, ah! Drop it and run.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, Tamika. I didn't know if you were Tamara or you. So I'm sorry, Tamika. I didn't know that was you.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. Freddy's backstory changes a bit from each film, though.
Yeah, they did because originally he was just the child molester, murderer, or whatever, and then in the third one, and this is something I also noticed this time is that these iconic series, Freddy, Michael, and Jason, all in the middle of the series have a 3-movie trilogy.
Really,
Yeah,
I never
so in this
noticed
one,
that.
you have the Kristen trilogy, well the Dream Warriors trilogy basically because you got Dream Warriors, Dream Warriors, Dream. What was the fourth one again? Dream Master, Dream Child.
Yeah, Dream Child.
Kristen has the power in the first one. She passes it to the other girl in the second, and that girl is the lead in the third. In Friday the 13th, you've got the Tommy Jarvis trilogy. And then in Halloween, you've got the Jamie Lloyd trilogy. All three of them have trilogies in the middle of their series. I did not realize that.
That's actually pretty cool now that you actually mention it because I didn't know anything about it until you just brought it up.
Yeah,
So
again, I was just watching the movie this time, and it just one of those thoughts that popped in my head, and it's like, oh, cool.
let's see here. Since we're on the subject of how we got introduced into Freddy and stuff like that, for me, it was at Toys R Us. Don't get me wrong. There was other stuff that was I knew who Freddy was and stuff like that, and of course I was still afraid of him. But there was this little doll that that would sell at Toys R Us.
Oh yeah,
and it said "Try me," so I pushed the button, and that thing started talking. I ran out the door.
wow.
And then that following night, I had a nightmare thinking that the doll came alive. Then you remember in Nightmare on Elm Street 2 where you see an image of Freddy in the boiler room, and he's doing something, putting some wood into the boiler.
Yeah.
Well, he looks at me and he tells me that I'm next to go in the boiler. I woke up and sweat crying.
So that was me with Chucky, but I can totally sympathize with you. I could totally sympathize with you. Yeah. Because when you're a child, just the image of this burned man with knives is so frightening. And to think they got the idea for the makeup from a pepperoni pizza.
Now, let me tell you about the sausage pizza for part 4. It made me not want to eat sausage pizza when I was a kid.
Nice.
Because
yeah, some of those moments are kind of just surreal.
No, Brandy, Annabelle did not come to see me, but Annabelle does not even scare me like Freddy does. So but yeah, Child's Play also scared me though as a kid with Chucky.
But that's because my mom let me watch it when I was 3 because she's a psychopath.
Let's see here. Two Blur Girls. I think Dream Child was controversy with the Catholic Church, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, for sure, because it dealt with a nun getting raped and showing it and dealing with this whole like demon child stuff. So yeah, of course they'll just jump over anything.
Exactly. Not only that, but we're also dealing with a nun getting raped in the opening scene of Nightmare on Elm Street 5. So
Yeah,
that actually
exactly.
caused a lot of controversy with that,
Yeah.
to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, also Nightmare on Elm Street 5 was hacked and slashed quite a bit. Like they reveal it on that Never Sleep Again documentary. But for example, the boyfriend, when he dies in the motorcycle accident where he turns into the motorcycle, there was a lot more really cool special effects for that, but unfortunately it was deemed too disturbing, so they had to cut a lot of it out.
Oh wow. You see, I would have loved to see that because here's the thing, even though number 5 is my least favorite, there's aspects of the dreams that I like with the kills.
Yeah.
I like the comic book kill where the kid's in the comic book.
Yes. That is a really well done unique kill.
Definitely. And then I also like you said before, the motorcycle kill was my favorite.
Yeah, Dan, that was his name.
Let's see here. I think Dreamchild had Tamika was wondering about.
No, it's not Dreamchild. It's Freddy's Dead.
Yeah.
Rachel Talalay directed it, and she actually was involved in every Nightmare on Elm Street in different roles, as be it as a producer or a script supervisor. And then finally on that one, they gave her the chance to direct. And she's actually gone on and directed like a lot of other stuff. She's becoming a very acclaimed TV director now. But yeah, that was the first female in the series was for Freddy's Dead.
That's pretty cool though, how she came up like that, where she's a producer, writer, and then she decided, oh, you know what? I think that we actually, you know.
And she says in the documentary that she has a gold record from the Dream Warriors single on her wall because she got a credit for it.
Let's see. Dream Warriors is my favorite. It scares me the least, plus anti-drug campaign to it.
Yeah, it does have an anti-drug campaign, but I think it's the last true movie that delves properly into psychosis.
Let's see. One more piece of trivia real quick. The original premise of the film involved Freddy invading the real world and haunting the actors and crew responsible for the Nightmare on Elm Street films. The idea was rejected by the studio, though Wes Craven later used it for New Nightmare in 1994.
Yeah, which is a great movie. You can see where Scream came from when you watch that movie.
Most definitely, man. And also, too, I want to say Wes Craven's New Nightmare is probably one of my favorite ones out of
in the series
franchise, though, too.
Yeah, I'd say that as well. I'd say that as well.
Do you like Part 6? I know that some people like it.
Part 6 is my least favorite.
Yeah, I want to say it's my least favorite. There's aspects I liked, but as a whole, it was a mess.
I like the idea of Freddy having a daughter, but it's just it was so poorly executed. By that point, the franchise didn't have any legs. If it was purposely written this way, it would have been like Scary Movie. Like it's almost a parody of itself.
Right. And I also feel like too, in a sense, it was too complicated to try and figure out.
Yeah.
But all right, guys. So tell us in the comments before we actually head out, what are some of your favorite moments when it comes down to the Nightmare on Elm Street series and stuff like that? What's your favorite memories of getting scared of it? After all, this is my Scream on Screen reviews of doing these horror movies and everything. Matter of fact, tomorrow night I'm going to have The Shining on with Jack Nicholson,
which I've still never finished.
Oh wow! I have part 1 and I have part 2.
It's because I find this is my personal opinion. I do agree with everybody that he is a great filmmaker. I find Stanley Kubrick boring, personally.
And I'm going to get into that tomorrow night on my thoughts.
Sorry.
That's a little bit of a teaser. So let's see here. Did you guys see the Freddy TV show? What are your thoughts?
I have not, but that is another segment in that Never Sleep Again documentary. And if I'm not mistaken, you can actually watch the episodes on YouTube. And you see a lot of not quite so famous yet people in there. Brad Pitt did an episode.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yep.
I watched a couple episodes of it. I just might have a mental block because of how young I was at that time.
Yeah.
So that happens. Then of course, another thing too, I watched Nightmare Cafe. That was also another thing Robert Englund posted. And then there was also him, and also too, he was also in Star Trek.
I only knew that he did V as well.
Yeah, he did Star Trek, and my aunt met him at an airport once over in Logan because she used to be the TSA agent. She goes, "Oh, Freddy." That's the first thing she said.
Nice. Yeah, here's a few of the guest actors that appeared in Freddy's Nightmares. Kyle Chandler, Morris Chestnut, Mariska Hargitay, Eve LaRue, Lori Petty, Brad Pitt, Timothy Bottoms, Jeffrey Combs, Jeff Conaway, Diane Franklin, it's David Lander, for those who know him better as Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley, Dick Miller, and Jay Thomas, and George Lazenby as well.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also too, the other part of the story I was going to tell you though too with my aunt, she goes, "Oh, I liked you in Star Trek." Goes, "You know what? Not that many people knew that I was in Star Trek. Everybody knows me from Freddy. So thank you for telling me that you like my performance in Star Trek."
Yeah,
but yeah, I remember when he did play a bit in Star Trek though.
But which Star Trek would it have been?
I need to Google that. As a matter of fact, I was trying to Google it earlier and I couldn't find it. So I'm gonna have to go back and look at it. But I know that for a fact that he did play a part in it.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
But
you looking for it?
Yeah, I'm still looking. You and I are both doing it too.
Yeah. Yeah, except I've got the second screen I can do it on.
Yeah, you can go on ahead and look that up though. But you know,
Star Trek.
But Stanley Kubrick, as far as the director goes and everything, he's okay. But to be honest with you, I prefer Dr. Sleep over The Shining.
Really?
And I'll explain that tomorrow night on my review, because there's a lot of stuff that I want to dive into with that. Mm-hmm. Because I read The Shining, I read the book.
Okay.
And I'm going to do a comparison, even though it might be very objective of me to do a comparison from the book or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if you read the book and then you read how Dr. Sleep actually ends and the way that they did it, it's actually a page by page of what Stephen King did for The Shining for the book.
Oh, cool.
So there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to mention tomorrow night, especially with the slow build up with Jack Nicholson's character, and things like that. And also too, Stephen King doesn't like that adaptation. He said it felt more like a motor being started right away on a sports car with no. He said basically there was no range, no emotion, nothing there. It was just Jack being Jack. That's what he said.
Yeah, no, fair point, because it is Jack being Jack.
Right. But still, overall though, this film is very entertaining. I love this film.
It's the one I go back and watch
rings up there. Right. But I am gonna see if I can get Frenchie on here to do a review for part 4, because I know part 4 is one of his favorites. Of course, we also did a trailer reaction to that last year.
Nice.
Because I think you went into the studio and watched our reaction to the trailer when we were doing it.
I think I did. That's right, I did. Because you guys do it on both of our things.
Right. So you guys can probably catch that on our YouTube channel and everything if we released it, because I'm not sure, because we were having some audio at that time. We were trying it out with and we had some audio issues back and forth with it at that time. So it's just us reacting to a mute screen.
Yeah,
I think.
Nice.
So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for the show, but where can everybody follow you at, Soda?
So you can follow me in my personal Instagram and Twitter at soda_the_saxman. You can find me on the Schmoes of the North Podcast Network, where I am on pretty much every goddamn show. I produce Let's Talk About Star Wars, which at this point our schedule is we do 2 weeks, we take off 2 weeks. We have a game coming up where you have to guess the planet, whether it's in Star Wars or not. And if it's not in Star Wars, you get an extra point for guessing where it's from. So that's the type of game stuff we like to do on that channel. You can also find me on Shooting the Breeze every Saturday morning. You can find me every Monday on Recap in the Past. Currently, myself, Ben Rayner, and 50 Shades of Geek, and our special guest, Jess, are reviewing Doctor Who right now.
Oh, nice.
And so you can find me there. You can find me on Thursday, Shooting the Breeze. Currently, we're doing our own horror review. We just did Sleepwalkers, and actually coming up this Thursday, we're doing Chopping Mall.
Oh, nice, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
I figured I'd go the opposite route, and we do review like the campy movies. And boy, was Sleepwalkers campy.
Very campy. I remember renting that from Blockbuster and being like, what the heck am I watching? And I was like only 8 years old at that time, or 10 years old at that time, watching that film.
Yeah.
But anyways, guys, if you guys want to, go on ahead and follow me at Movie Lovers TV Lovers Night on Facebook underneath the same brand name on Instagram and on Pinterest as well. But before you do that, you guys need to go on and click the link below. Go over to the link over there, because you know why? We're actually doing a charity event with Tubular Girls podcast with St. Jude's to help the kids with cancer and things like that. All the proceeds go over to St. Jude's Children's Hospitals and things like that. So go on ahead, get yourself a Scentsy, and you can go on ahead and all the proceeds will go over to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Of course, you guys can always go on ahead, donate to the page. How do you do that? You just go on ahead, go to GoFundMe.com/Movie Lovers podcast, and that's how you can donate $5 to $10 over there. But a simple like, a simple share goes a long way over here at Movie Lovers Night. So go on ahead, hit that like button, hit that share button, hit that subscribe button, smash that bell in the bottom right-hand corner if you're watching this on YouTube to let you guys know that we have other stuff coming out in other content. Because like I said, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 6 o'clock Pacific Time, we are doing our review of The Shining, and then we're probably going to follow it up with doing Dr. Sleep later on. But I have independent director Clinton Robinson on with me doing that one tomorrow night. Then, of course, guys, go on ahead and get an audio-only podcast wherever you guys get your podcast from. And then, of course, go ahead, go over to Good Pods. Good Pods is a great place if you're someone that loves listening to podcasts, if you love podcasts yourself. There's an easy play button over there. You can listen to our podcast, and also too, you can share the podcast and things like that, and also too, rate each individual episode to tell us how we're doing, what we're doing wrong, if we're doing anything wrong, and go on ahead, do that. And then, of course, you can follow me underneath Movie Lovers Unit on Twitter and the Movie Lovers Unit 001.
I'm sorry, no matter how many times I hear it, that will not make me laugh. Never not make me laugh.
Well, they need to update their settings if they don't want it to be dirty. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep on promoting it like this until they do it.
It's the best. Movie Lovers Unit.
Right. But yeah, you guys can go on ahead, follow me underneath Movie Lovers Unit on Twitter, and then, of course, on TikTok at Movie Lovers Unit 001. And then you can go on ahead, follow me underneath Movie. If you're a sponsor or would like to reach out to the page, all you have to do is email me at movieloversunite@gmail.com, and that's everywhere you can reach me at. And thank you again, Soda, for joining me for tonight. I do appreciate it.
Anytime.
This has been a fun episode as usual. So, guys, it's been real. It's been fun. Have a spooky day, and bye-bye.